Hello everyone, Dicko here with another kick-ass walkthrough. This is part 2 of my Spider-Verse style animation tutorial. This one's a little shorter in length, but if you stick around, there's a bit of bonus content at the end. Thank you everyone, by the way, to those who watched, liked, and commented on the first video, and a big welcome to those who subscribed. Anyway, this video is primarily about how to correctly track stepped animation with a camera that is animated on ones or is splined. Alright, jumping right into it, I've created a simple animation, just 2 cubes. They both have the same animation, just like the last video. One is splined, so the yellow one is splined, and if you look at the graph editor, it's got a smooth spline. And if you look at the red cube, it's been baked in and it's animating on 2s. So if I play that back, let's have a look. And now you can see it's pretty much doing exactly what we want it to do. The camera is moving backwards, but if you look on it sideways, you'll see that the actual cube is doing exactly what happened in the last video. So it's basically playing catch up with the splined animation and holding on every second frame. And that looks really good when you look at it side on. But if you look at the same thing from the view of this camera, so let me switch into the camera view, and we look at the same animation, and we'll play that back, you'll see that obviously the yellow cube is fine, it's playing on ones. But if you look at the second cube, the red cube, it's kind of jittery. It's actually looks like it's stepping backwards on every hold frame, and then catching up with the yellow cube. And now, the reason for this is quite simple. So the camera is animating on ones, whilst the cube is holding on every second frame. So basically, what's happening is that the camera is pulling away during that hold frame of that cube, causing a shift in perspective, which gives it this appearance that the cube is sort of moving backwards on those second frames. So we need to find a solution to this. Basically, we need to find a way of offsetting that animation so we can have the cube sort of look like it's staying in place when the camera's pulling away from that hold frame. The solution to this, however, is not as simple as you might think. Unfortunately, there's no real easy way to solve this in either Blender or any other software like Maya. And both solutions pretty much require some sort of plugin to make it work. And without some sort of scripting magic to do the math, trying to fix it using just the out-of-box toolset in Blender or Maya just leads to double transforms and all kinds of other nonsense. Luckily for us though, there are 2 absolute legends who have already provided solutions for this. On the Blender side, a guy called CodyWinch has devised a solution for Blender users, while a guy called Alessandro Camporota for you Maya guys. Links to their original videos are linked in the description below. I'm going to be touching on CodyWinch's solution because the method used in Maya simply doesn't work in Blender because of the way that Blender handles its dependencies. However, unlike CodyWinch's video, I'm going to be using a far simpler animation than his example, because I feel that it's easier to understand what's going on without the crazy animation in his example video. I will say, definitely check out the original video that he's posted because it goes into detail into why and how the plugin works. Alright, so the plugin we're going to use is called the MPR Framerate Mixer. Basically, when you run the script, it detects the difference in the distance between the camera and your animated object, and then creates a empty, which will then bake in that camera offset during the hold frames of your animation. It's a really nice solution which works on pretty much any kind of stepped animated object, including geometry and armatures. So let's try this on a third cube that I've animated. Again, it has the same animation as my other cubes, and we'll see what difference it makes. I've already got the plugin installed, but if you want to install the plugin, the link is in the description below. You can either purchase it from the Blender Market or you can get it from Gumroad. Once you've installed the add-on, it's available in the N panel of your interface. Alright, so the actual plugin is really simple to use. All you have to do is click on the animated object that you want to create the offsets for, and then click on the Detect Hold Frames button. And what this will do is basically bake in that locator with the offset data. So just click that button, and it may take a little while depending on your animation, depending on how complex it is, but it instantly creates a empty in the center of your scene file. And if we look at the actual graph, you'll see that it's created a bunch of keyframes with the correct offset distance of your frames. And if you look at the actual locator in action, it basically matches that glitchy effect that's happening in your camera's viewport. Now, to actually apply this offset to your object, all you have to do is basically click on your object that's animating, and then click on the locator, the empty, and parent that cube or that animated object to the locator, or empty, sorry. And then now, if we play that back, it's inherited those offsets, and now that glitchiness is practically gone. Now, let's compare them against all three animations. So obviously the yellow cube on the bottom is animating on 1, so that looks silky smooth. The cube in the middle, the red cube, hasn't had any offsets applied or sort of fixed, and that's just still inheriting that glitchy effect. It still looks like it's bouncing backwards on every second frame. If we look at the blue cube, which has now inherited the offsets of the empty, you'll see that it's actually animating much more smoothly, at least in the camera view. If we do that, if we look at that animation frame by frame, it practically looks perfect on that hold frame. And this is about as close as you're going to get for free, mind you, to achieve that Spider-Verse sort of stepped animation look with a smooth camera. There is one caveat to this method, however. If you pull away from the camera and look at this animation now on the side, you will see that the actual glitchy effect is almost translated into any other view other than that of the camera. So I definitely recommend that if you do want to apply this plugin to your work out your animation first, and then once you're happy with that animation, bake in those frames using the MPR frame rate mixer. Now, that's not to say that this plugin doesn't work on more complicated objects. It will work perfectly fine with animated run cycles, movement, jumps, you name it. So let's open up a more complicated scene. I made a quick run cycle for this project to show you how it works. So I've got this run cycle here. Let's play it back. It hasn't got the plugin. I haven't done the offset yet, but if we play it back, you can see I've got the camera moving backwards. I've got the little pillars there just for your reference again to show you that the camera is animated on 1s. And if we look at the animation of the run cycle, again, it looks like it's pulling back on those hold frames. So if I just find a frame where it's animated on 2s, you can see it's playing catch up yet again. So there's a hold frame there. It looks like it's shrinking in the viewport, and then it catches up again. Okay, so to do the same thing as before, we just go into pose mode in this case, and we select any old joint that we want to use as an offset. I recommend using an object which sort of represents the center of gravity of your animation, so of your character, or something that is sort of a global control, somewhere that gives you a more even sort of offset. So I click on in my case, I've clicked on the torso of my animation because that's where the bulk of the animation is coming from. And again, I click on detect hold frames, and now it's created that empty. That empty is now glitching back and forth. It's got the offsets. And now all I have to do is jump into object mode and select my rig. So right now I'm in pose mode. I jump into object mode, and then I select my rig. I select the empty, and then I parent that whole armature object to the empty. And now if I play that back, that looks way, way better. So that glitchy effect is now gone. So if I jump into my animation again in pose mode and have a look at that that animation, and I jump to those hold frames, the same hold frame I was looking at before, notice how the perspective of my character is now staying the same during that hold frame. And as you can see, it works just as well when you have a variety of holds. So I've got holds on 1s, I've got holds on 2s in this run cycle, for instance. And it's working perfectly well. As long as your animation is in stepped animation mode, it'll work great. The other cool thing is that I'm actually animating a cycle here. I've only animated one part of a run cycle, one loop. And then the rest in the graph editor, if you look at the graph editor, I'm actually just repeating the same cycle over and over again. The cool thing about this plugin is that it doesn't really care if you're working with cycles. As long as it's detecting those hold frames, it will create that baked animation into the empty regardless, which is really sweet. I didn't think it was going to do that, but it does. And that's just an extra bonus you get from this plugin. It's really, really cool. So that's about it. With this plugin and the tools and the methods you've learnt from before, you're ready to be smashing out those Spider-Verse style animations. However, there's one final note about this plugin that I feel I need to reiterate. If you have a scene where a camera is not moving, you do not need to use this plugin. You only need to use it when the camera and the animated object is moving. And you only really need it if the camera is animating on 1s. Finally, you do need to have a camera in the scene for this plugin to work. And if you have multiple cameras in the scene, make sure that your camera that you want to be viewing from is the active camera. Otherwise, you might end up baking that empty offset to another camera, and that's going to cause all kinds of problems. So just be aware of that, and before you know it, you'll be smashing out these animations. So yeah, until next time, catches. Alright, so for this bonus content, I'm going to be showing you a time lapse of this very run cycle from start to finish as I make it. Enjoy!